Okay, hello everybody. We'll let everyone trickle in here and get started here in just a minute.
Hey everyone. While everyone is joining us, it would be great if you could put in the chat maybe what year your student is going to graduate high school. It'd be fun to see who's with us tonight. 27, 28,
Yeah, I think
26s,
my guess is there'll be a lot of 26s.
26s. Yeah. And your
Okay,
guess was
thank you.
right.
During the presentation, if you guys ideally please use the Q&A if you're going to ask any questions. We're happy to try and answer as many of those as we can during the webinar, but it's just a lot easier for us to address them as we're going through this. If you can post those in the Q&A as opposed to the chat during the webinar.
All right. I think we're good to kick it off. I'll start screen sharing and we can go from there.
Great.
Set. One sec. I knew something was going to happen with my screen sharing tonight, so just
This
bear
is
with
this is why I want you to do it, not me.
me. All right.
All
All
right,
right.
here we go. Okay, perfect. Yep, all good. All right. As a way of introduction, my name is Dan Maga. I am in the Chicagoland area. Um, and I've been working with families, helping them figure out how they're going to pay for their children's college education since 2004. So, a little over 20 years working with parents on the financial side of helping them navigate how they're going to pay for their kids' college education. And then more recently joined College Aid Pro about a year and a half ago. So, a little over 20 years working with families, but maybe only the last year and a half or so working directly through College Aid Pro. Um, and my partner tonight in crime is Kevin Murphy.
Thanks, Dan. Yeah, I'm one of the college planning experts here at College Aid Pro. I did not start doing this in 2004. I started doing this in 2018, but
What were
got
you
in
doing in 2004, Kevin?
in 2004. I think I was still in middle school. Uh, but I've been doing this since 2018. I got into this from the financial services side, and I just quickly fell in love with college financial aid. And as strange as it sounds, I think it's fair to say I'm a college financial aid nerd. But since then, I've been very, very fortunate. I've been able to work with just about 1,000 families, and I've seen this inside and out. So I think between Dan and myself, everyone here tonight is in really, really good hands, and we've got some really good information on financial aid and scholarships to go over with you. And for anyone who isn't aware of us or what we do, we are College Aid Pro, and we're really here to help families shop smarter for college and to end the student debt crisis. So we've already introduced ourselves, but there's Dan and myself. And as a good starting point for everyone who's on tonight's call, actually, I'll put it in the chat. If you do not already have a MyCap account, please please go and create one. We're going to go through it tonight. We're going to show you a little bit about the software. We're going to show you a little bit about what's included and kind of how you use it and the numbers you see. But it's a really great starting point for anyone who's embarking on this college planning process. Not only does it tell you how much colleges cost, helps you search for scholarships and so forth. So we'll dive more into that later. Actually, Dan, could you put the code in? I know we're jumping kind of into this, but
Yeah, did you put the link in there or no? I don't see it in the
I
chat.
just
Oh,
dropped
I
it
got
in.
it. Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah, I'll put so yeah, you've the link is in the chat so where you can set this up and then um the code here, I'm going to put this in basis. That's going to allow you to upgrade to the premium account for free for the first month. So be sure when you're setting up the account to put in that basis, um, BASIS as the code when you're setting up the account.
perfect. And so before we dive into financial aid, we do want to just spend a few minutes quickly talking about some of the big changes from the big beautiful bill from last month, and that will go into effect July 1st of next year. So that would be for the 26-27 school year. And some of these changes are really meaningful and will actually impact families. With that being said, for Pell Grants remain mostly the same. I'm not going to get into the nitty gritty and the super details, but there was a shortfall. That money was added just as a lump sum, and full-time students still 24 credit hours. There was talk that that might change. Pell Grant, it's for direct costs only. So think tuition, fees, right? Room and board through the college, but it's only for direct costs. And now Pell Grants can be utilized through the Workforce Pell Program. And that would be shorter term programs that previously were excluded. So these are some really meaningful changes, right? They're pretty impactful. One last one is foreign income used to be excluded from the calculation, but starting next year, it will be included again for the calculation of Pell Grant eligibility. Now, loan changes, out of any of these changes, the changes to student loans will have the biggest impact to families, primarily the Parent Plus loan. But first, the federal direct student loan, the loan that every student who files the FAFSA has access to. And, that's a ways away before you actually need to accept that or consider that, but it's important to know. That's the same, right? No changes at all. But the Parent Plus loan, this was the big one. Parent Plus loan starting next year will be capped at $20,000 a year or $65,000 for a student's lifetime. Previously, even this year, if you borrow, it's no cap, it's unlimited. So this new $20,000 cap, it really is going to change the game for many families. And for anyone, I didn't see any, but anyone on tonight's call with a 2025 grad, you can take a loan this year and be grandfathered into current limits, which is essentially no limit. But that would only apply if your student was starting college this year or currently in college. The grad plus loans, those were eliminated. And in terms of the annual direct grad loan limits, 20,500, that's for grad students. And then think med school, law school, that's $50,000. And those two also have legacy. Now, a few other minor changes. The small business exclusion is back, right? So there's a point where you had to report a small business on the FAFSA, but starting July 1st of next year, you no longer have to report a family-owned small business on the FAFSA. In addition to that, commercial fisheries are also excluded. So that's another consideration. Loan repayment plans, that is also a big change. Like I mentioned, student loans, they are, the ones that were impacted the most by this. And that would be the standard and repayment assistance plan. So all these other repayment assistance plans are going to go away. And the college endowment tax is increased, but the small colleges with less than 3,000 students, those are excluded. An interesting one, which is yet to be tested, is college accountability. And colleges need to essentially pass certain tests. Otherwise, they're not going to have access to federal student aid programs, which that's a big deal for colleges. That's how a lot of colleges or a lot of families even pay for college. And lastly is 529 plans. There are more qualified expenses added and increased limits for K-12 withdrawal. The K-12 withdrawal limits, meaning paying for, let's say, private high school with a 529, that was essentially doubled. And qualified expenses, that has definitely opened up. There's even the ability to use 529s now for, or when this goes into effect for SAT tutoring. So there's definitely been some expanded uses for it. But that's it on the big beautiful bill. We just wanted to keep everyone up to speed and kind of just quickly summarize that for everyone. You want to take it from
Okay.
here, Dan?
Yes. Sorry, I was just answering a question. Okay, so what is financial aid? In essence, it's a discount off the sticker price of the school. And we talk about sticker price, we're talking about the cost of attendance. The cost of attendance, in essence, is the school's tuition and fees and room and board and estimates for books, travel, that sort of thing. So, like, your all in cost for college. It's not just the tuition, it's all of that stuff. So, financial aid is a discount off that total cost for the school. Um, one of those is need-based grants. A grant is something that does not have to be repaid. So this is free money, but it's awarded based on your financial profile or parent and students' income, assets, finances, that sort of thing. So you have to qualify for the grant financially. Whereas a merit-based scholarship, which is also free money right off the top, is awarded based on the student's merits or talents, most common being academic merit scholarships. So that's saying, where the student's grades or test scores, say, are lining up near the top of that college's incoming class, that's a school that may be prone to offer that student a merit-based scholarship. It's generally maybe your safety type schools for the kids versus if it's going to be really difficult for the student to get into the school, maybe like a reach type school, probably less likely to offer a merit-based scholarship. Um, and for these merit-based scholarships, they have nothing to do with your finances. So if you don't qualify for need-based grants, your student can still qualify for a merit-based scholarship. Um, and there is no magic like GPA or test score to qualify for a scholarship. It's not like once you have a 30 ACT, you get scholarships, and if you have a 29, you don't. It depends on the competitiveness on the school, and all schools are different. For example, in Chicago, I use the example of it's easier to get a scholarship from Michigan State versus Michigan. And you could kind of use that example across the country. So just because you may say, oh, my son's not going to get a scholarship, he doesn't have a great GPA, don't necessarily think that. Now, you've talked to Kevin or myself, and your kid has a 2.8 GPA and a 22 ACT. Don't expect us to tell you they're going to get a scholarship from UCLA. That's just not realistic. But there are schools that will, and you've just got to figure out where your kid's grades and scores line up near the top of the class. So those are the two buckets that we want the most: the grants and the scholarships, because that's free money. Not so much in terms of self-help, which is also financial aid, but this is not free money. It's either loans or work study. So loans that have to be repaid, or a work study program, which is generally where the student is working, earning money on campus, and then they can use that earning to pay for potentially a cost of college. So our focus is obviously on the grants and the scholarship buckets, because that's what we want as a way to reduce the net cost of college and then make it that much easier for the parents to figure out how to pay for it. Here's kind of a simple scenario on how this financial aid kind of equation works. So you've got the cost of attendance of the school, or the sticker price, less the SAI, which used to be known as the EFC, which is Student Aid Index, or previously known as the Expected Family Contribution. That's in essence what the schools think you can afford to pay. And then the difference between those two numbers is the need. So if the cost of the school is 80,000 and your SAI is 60,000, you've got $20,000 of financial aid eligibility within that example. Now it's up to the school to determine, of that 20,000, how much they want to offer in the terms of a grant or a loan. They are not obligated to meet your eligibility. It's up to them. So you can't just blanketly assume, oh, my SAI is 60,000, the school's 80,000, they're going to give me a $20,000 grant. Not necessarily true. It's up to the school. Generally speaking, the private schools will do a better job of offering grants to those that qualify than the public schools. So not only do you have to understand what your SAI is, and ideally, if there's ways to reduce it, how you can do that to increase your eligibility, but then you also need to really understand, based on the schools your kid is thinking about applying to, how good or how bad of a job they do of offering those grants. Now, in terms of your SAI, there's certain assets that they're looking at, and there's some that are not going to be factored into the formula. First and foremost, all of your retirement accounts are protected. So 401ks, IRAs, pension plans, Roth IRAs, 403bs, cash value life insurance, you don't have to report any of those values on the FAFSA form. Now, there is a big difference between parent assets and student assets. So when you're filling out this form, there's going to be two sections, parent section and student section. And I think a common mistake people make is with the 529 plans, which is going to have both your name and the child's name on the statement. And some people accidentally report that as a student asset, but a 529 plan is going to be reported as a parent asset compared to a custodial account or a UTMA, UGMA account also has your name and the student's name on the statement, but that's considered a student asset. And the parent assets are assessed at a far lower value than the student assets. 5% for a parent asset and typically 20 to 25% for the student asset. So much more penalizing to have money saved in your child's name versus your name. Um, Another caveat here for the 529, grandparent 529s. Very common, grandparent owns a 529 for the benefit of their grandchild. You don't have to report those values anywhere on the FAFSA form because you as the parent don't own that account. The grandparent does. Um, the same would go for if the parents are divorced. Let's say mom and dad are divorced. Mom is determined to be the custodial parent. We'll get into that in a little bit, what determines that if you're a divorced family. But if mom is the custodial parent and mom is the one completing the FAFSA, but her ex-husband or dad owns a 529 for the benefit of the child, mom does not have to report that 529 value on the FAFSA form because she doesn't own the account. Her ex-husband does, and his information isn't on the FAFSA. So there's a lot of nuance here, especially within these 529s, which is, I think, by far the most popular way that people are saving for college. And then real estate. So on the FAFSA form, your primary residence is protected. Just like the retirement accounts, you're not going to have to put that value anywhere on the form. Um, there is a separate financial aid form that we'll get into in a little bit on top of the FAFSA called the CSS profile. This is generally for your higher priced private schools like Stanford and Occidental and Colorado College, a couple examples of those schools. And those schools that require the CSS profile on top of the FAFSA are going to ask about your home. So for those schools, it could come into play. For the schools that only require the FAFSA form, the home will not come into play. Um, and you're going to be reporting these asset values as of the day you submit the FAFSA. So if you submit the FAFSA on October 10th, after it opens on October 1st, it's the values as of that day. Versus income is a little bit different. They're going to look 2 years back. So if you've got a 2026 graduating senior, when you fill out that FAFSA in October, it's the assets as of that day, and then the income you earned 2 years ago or 2024. And it's looking at all of your income, or the adjusted gross income is the key line item they're looking at. So it's not just your earned income. The AGI takes into account interest, dividends, Social Security, capital gains, basically everything. Um, and that's the key income line item they're going to look at, less the federal taxes that you paid. Um, and for the income situation for the student, they have an allowance of just over $9,400. So if your kid earned $9,400 or less, it will not negatively impact FAFSA or the SAI within this calculation.
I just want to add that every dollar above and beyond that allowance is assessed at 50 cents per dollar. So it's a really big impact. If you qualify for a lot of financial aid and your student has to work, whether it's to help pay for school or just to help with expenses, it could be penalizing if you're getting a lot of money and they're making more than that dollar amount. So it's important to understand the impacts of it and plan around it.
Yep, great point. Now, what if I don't qualify for need-based aid? Listen, there's a lot of people that we work with that just simply don't qualify for grants, either because their financial situation precludes them from qualifying, or maybe their student has chosen schools that just don't simply offer grants. Um, but if that's the case, don't just throw your arms up in the air and think that there's nothing that you can do, because for those families, as I kind of talked about earlier, we can focus on merit-based scholarships, which have nothing to do with mom and dad's finances and are really looking at the kids' grades and test scores. Um, and for those families who don't qualify, um, it is true that there are some schools that still require you apply for financial aid to be eligible for their merit scholarships. And a lot of private scholarships require it. So I would still suggest, even if you don't qualify for financial aid, that it's still going to be in your best interest to apply in the first place. Um, and there's also some schools out there that don't offer merit-based scholarships. The Ivy League schools, NESCAC schools. So, if your kid wants to go to MIT and you don't qualify for grants and they don't give scholarships to anybody, you can pretty well figure you're going to be paying full price. So, if you don't qualify for grants and then your kids want to go to one of these Ivy Leagues or these very competitive private schools that don't offer scholarships to anybody, there might not be any option for you outside of paying full rack rate. But if your kid can get into MIT or those types of schools, there's basically every other school in the country for the most part is going to be wanting that student and offering significant scholarship money to discount it. And that's why applying to competing colleges can be critical in terms of it is plausible, depending on the situation and the schools applied to, that you can compete or put one offer against the other. Again, that depends on the situation and the schools that we're talking about, but it is definitely possible. These schools are businesses, and some of their businesses aren't doing as well as others, and they realize that, hey, if we've got to give this kid an extra couple thousand to get them to commit, we're going to do that. So some schools you do have the ability to negotiate or kind of appeal to based on those circumstances.
Okay, so I want to show kind of what we're talking about to everyone. So I'm gonna go out of this and hopefully I able to do this pretty smoothly. But I'm going to now share my cap and what we just talked about in terms of if you don't qualify for grants or if you're going to focus on need-based aid and the percentage of need met at a given school, you need to know all of this as you embark on the process. Maybe your students are already getting ready to fill out their applications, but these details are helpful because it's going to not only impact the cost of colleges, but it's also maybe going to shift and change what schools are on your students list. So here is what the software looks like. And then the top right hand side, you'll see we have my profile info. And all of this is based off of tax and asset information that's inputted, as you can see here, as well as student information. So think GPA and test scores. You put all of that in and it generates your student aid index. Federal is the FAFSA, institutional is the CSS profile. Now, by putting all this in very quickly, you can see your instant net cost at schools like American, BC, Case Western. And let me just dive into this a little bit further. And you can even see the individual merit scholarship breakdowns, which this was a question we got in the chat before. Individual merit scholarship breakdowns based on GPA or test scores, right? So American, one student might get 10,000. That scholarship might be able to go up to 20,000. And this is also really helpful during the appeals process too. But so you put that information in there, and then it's going to again generate these net costs. But you can also kind of dive through each school and say, okay, well, hey, my student's interested in Columbia. I know my student aid index. Well, what percentage of need do they meet? Well, they meet 100% of need, 100% of need. And that means that they're basically going to give you every dollar you qualify for, which in this case would bring the cost of Columbia down to $47,000. So that's a big deal when it's a $92,000 school. That's roughly half price. So anything you want to point out in the software, Dan?
Um, Other than the fact that it would be almost impossible for you to do this on your own if you were trying to go through net price calculators. I mean, that's kind of the best part about this website is this information would be very hard for you to figure out on your own. I don't even know if it would be possible versus here, you're kind of putting all your information into one spot and it's going to automatically tell you or estimate, I should say, what type of awards your kids could receive from these schools prior to applying, which is really critical because by the time you find out what Columbia and these schools are awarding you in April,
Too
well, now
late.
it's too late to apply anywhere else. So this is going to really help you if you're trying to, identify schools within a certain budget. You need to do that now before your kid's applying, because if you just let them apply wherever they want and try and figure that on the back end and they choose schools that aren't helpful, you've got nowhere to go in the spring by the time you find that out.
Really good point. And we have some 28 families, some 29 families with us tonight. Even if your student is a 2028 or a 2029 graduate, it's not too early to start thinking about these things and even be proactive, right? Maybe you can make some changes. Maybe you can also make some adjustments to whether it's income, maybe assets to qualify for more money. But also, you'll just start getting an idea before your child even starts searching for colleges, which ones are going to give you money. Just for a minute, if anyone could throw, 1, 2 schools in the chat, I'd love to just give you a live example of this as well, and then we can kind of continue talking. We'll go into the FAFSA in a minute, but
Yeah, and someone just asked if it's need or merit. It is both. So this is calculating not only need-based grants, but academic merit scholarships too. So it
yep,
is looking at both. So if you don't qualify for grants, this is still going to be applicable to you for the scholarships.
yep. First one that came in was Rice. So I went with Rice. And you can see here, Rice expected net cost 47,000, and that's based on all of the information that was put in, right? Net cost, if you just looked at the sticker price, the cost of attendance would be 93,000. Why are they giving us this much money? It's because they meet full demonstrated need. They meet 100% of need. So basically, in this instance, we would be paying our student aid index. And that is common at the very, very, very competitive schools, but it's not common at every school. I'll do one more school, and then we can go back. I'll do USC. I'll do Trojans. So you can see here that USC is not nearly as generous as Rice or Columbia, and the expected net cost would still be $70,000 a year. That being said, it is $100,000 school. Why are they, or how is this money being awarded? Well, once again, it's grants, it's need. These super competitive schools don't often have merit scholarships. But okay, so let me stop sharing. Appreciate everyone's patience while I'm switching between. Okay. So Dan, do you want to talk about the FAFSA for a few minutes?
Sure. So, okay, the FAFSA, like we talked about, that's going to go live here on October 1st. So if you've got a 2026 senior on or after October 1st, that's when you can complete it. Keep in mind that's when it's available. That's not when it's due. It's available October 1st. The due date's going to be well beyond that. When is the due date? Who the hell knows? Because every school has a different deadline based on how the student applies. Early decision, early action, regular decision. So you'll have to check with the college's financial aid office based on how the student applies to see what that deadline is. Um, so October 1st, it goes live. Like we said, you're going to be filling this out um, with your asset values as of that day, and then the income as of 2024, at least for the 26-27 school year. Um, if the parents are divorced, the custodial parent is going to be the one that's going to submit the form. Who's the custodial parent? According to the FAFSA definition, it's the parent who provided a majority of the student's financial support the preceding 12 months. It is not who claimed the student on the tax return. It's not who the kid lived with. It's not which parent earned more money. It's which parent provided a majority of the student's financial support. So as you can imagine, if you're a divorced family, there can be a lot of strategy there in terms of which parent we utilize to apply for financial aid, especially if one is going to make the student more eligible than the other. Um, if mom is deemed to be the custodial parent, only mom's information is going on the FAFSA. Her ex-husband or dad's info is not going to be anywhere on there. It's all going to be about mom and student. The only information that mom is going to report from her ex-husband would be any taxable alimony or tax-free child support that she received from him in 2024 in that example. But other than that, dad's info isn't going to be taken into account for within that example for financial aid. And in order to submit the form, although it's not available till October 1st, you do need an FSA ID to submit this. Both the parent and the student needs one, and you can create those now. They do have to get verified by Social Security, which takes a couple days. So it wouldn't hurt to start creating those accounts now so you have them active and ready when the October 1st date hits and the FAFSA goes live. CSS profile, this is for the schools that use that institutional methodology. University of Miami, Florida, Tulane, Rice, SMU, a couple examples of schools that fall into this category. It doesn't have a live date like FAFSA where they tell you, but generally it's around October 1st. There's about 250 schools approximately that have this requirement. So for these schools, you still have to do the FAFSA, but you have to do this as well. And the main difference within the formula standpoint is they're going to look at your home equity on this form. So unlike the FAFSA where you don't have to report it, here they're going to ask you, what year did you buy your house? What did you pay for it? What is your mortgage balance? What is your mortgage payment? And what is the estimated value today? And the difference between the value that you estimate and the mortgage balance or the equity, they're going to factor into that SAI calculation just like it's cash in your checking account. So you've got to be very careful when you're filling out this form. The last thing you want to do is overvalue your home and inflate an asset that they're going to think you have the ability to tap into to pay their tuition bills. I think a common misconception on this form is that this is a form it's going to help me. It's trying to help me get financial aid. When in essence, it's quite honestly the opposite of that.
Yeah.
It's asking you a million questions so that you screw them up, and then now they have a reason not to give you financial aid. This form is far more intense than the FAFSA. Tons of questions, tons of details. Um, if you're a business owner, they're going to ask you, when did you start your business? How many employees do you have? What percent do you own? What were your gross receipts? What were your expenses? What's the address? It's just death by a thousand paper cuts on this form. Um, but these are the schools in general that do the best job of providing grants. So it's like, that's kind of why they're asking all these questions. Um, Another big difference here is for divorced families, unlike the FAFSA, where only one parent can do it, most schools that require this also require the non-custodial profile. So in that example I just gave, where mom and dad are divorced, mom's the custodial parent, mom fills out the FAFSA. If the kid is applying to Northwestern, boom, now mom has to do the CSS profile, and dad or the ex-husband in that example has to do the non-custodial profile. So these schools generally are still going to look at both parents' finances as opposed to just one in the divorce situation. Um, and I talked about the business owners, right? Like on the FAFSA, if you've got less than 100 employees, which most of our clients who have small businesses fall into that category, you're not going to worry about that valuation. But you do on the CSS profile. So again, a very good area where we can get strategic because it's hard for these schools to know what your business is worth. Um, and for this form, the only good news is you don't have to create an FSA ID and deal with the government website that the FAFSA likes to operate or try and operate. So this website, at least it works, I will say. And you're going to use your kids' College Board credentials to log into it. Most of your kids have probably already created that account themselves, so you'll just ask for their login credentials to be able to get in. And then the other difference here, unfortunately, it's not free. The FAFSA is free. This one, at least this past year, they charged a $9 registration fee and then $16 per college. So not only is it going to take up a lot of your time and you'll be pulling your hair out, but then they're going to make you pay for it at the end of the day to submit it.
If your income's less than 100,000 though, you do qualify for a waiver. But yeah, it's
That is
it's
true.
not free and it's definitely stressful. If the college is using the CSS profile, it's because they give a lot of their own money. And you can really cost yourself thousands by making a mistake on the CSS profile, which is going to be very hard to convince the college that, hey, I made a mistake or hey, I did otherwise. So you really want to get it right the first time. And with CSS schools, there's a lot of money on the line. Now, I'm going to try and jump back into the software for 1 second. And someone did ask if I can show a merit example. So I will do that as well. But now I know why you asked me to screen share tonight. So I will first show a merit example. So why don't we do Rensselaer? Rensselaer Polytechnic. Maybe you haven't heard of this school. It's a tech school, big, engineering school, computer science school in New York. And if you look here from a merit scholarship perspective, based on GPA, this student is automatically getting 32,500. A 1560 on the SATs, a student will get 40,000. A
So
1390,
not to cut you off, but there's a good example of someone just asked, should I retake the test?
perfect
That's
example.
an impossible question to answer without knowing a lot of other things. But this would be an example where, yeah, if that student retook that test and got that score increased, it would obviously bump them up to another like a larger monetary scholarship offer. But there's also schools where you could do that and maybe it doesn't make a bit of difference. So it kind of all depends.
Yeah, absolutely. And let me go back here. So in the software, there is a line by line tutorial of the FAFSA and the CSS profile by our lovely Peg. So very, very detailed. And then I know we don't, just because the time of year, we don't have anything uploaded, but you will and you are able to upload financial aid awards. And it's uh, able to tell you if, hey, if this is a good offer or great and ideal, or you need to appeal. So by uploading the awards into the software, you can see here. So you have a very strong chance of appealing. You have a strong chance or less likely or very low chance of appealing. And sorry, I don't have any awards uploaded in here. But I did want to mention that as well. And that'll actually lead us back to talking about appeals, which we are in August, and for the class of 2025, believe it or not, it's actually not too late to appeal. But ideally, that is something you want to have done before the deposit is paid. So, Dan, do you want to take this one or do you want me to?
Sure. So again, for the appeals, we're kind of ahead of that time frame. Usually this is going to be like winter, spring, I would say, especially spring, as to when you're going to be doing this. I think an instance where you might be appealing very early would be as if you know your 2025 tax return is going to have a lot less income than 2024's. You have to report the 24 income on the forms. There's no way around it. But if that's the case, what I would be suggesting is you need to get that 25 tax return filed as quickly as you can in the spring so that then you can go and appeal to the colleges with that updated information and see if they can base the aid off of the new tax return. But if you're trying to appeal just in the spring because now you've got all the awards and you're just not sure where the kid wants to go and you want a better deal, that's probably not going to be until March, April timeframe. Um, and so there's all different ways that you can appeal, right? You could maybe be appealing based on different awards or an income change or you lose your job. There's all different ways that you can appeal. The key thing I think to realize is there's a lot of stuff that could be going on within your financial situation that the schools would have no way of knowing about unless you appealed and you told them directly because the FAFSA isn't going to be asking about it. So you've got to bring a color and a background to your story to kind of help them understand your situation and why you might be deserving or eligible for more money. Um, and depending on the school, don't hesitate to show them the other awards if schools have offered more money than the school that your kid wants to go to, which invariably, I can promise you, your kid is going to want to go to the most expensive school or the one that offers the least amount of money. That's just unfortunately how this game always works, it seems like. So don't be afraid to tell the schools that. And to be persistent, right? Like I said, you need to go out of your way to tell them about your situation and be proactive about it to see if they can make adjustments. Um, and in some cases, I think it can make sense for the student to lead the charge, especially if it is maybe based on a merit scholarship and not like mom or dad lost their job, that sort of thing. Um, I think it can be helpful if the student is the one like taking the initiative and, working with the college and trying, this is my education. My parents are only giving me so much money and they want me to go here because this school gave me more money, like, that sort of thing. So there's a lot of ways that you can approach this. Um, it just kind of depends on the schools and the situation to determine what the best course of action is to try and get the desired result.
All right. So that is all that we have to cover tonight. But we can absolutely spend a few minutes answering some questions. So let me stop sharing here. But we'll spend a few minutes. If anyone wants to put a few questions in the Q&A, we'll address them, and then that'll be all for tonight. I do have a few other things to go over though while we're waiting for some questions to pop in the chat. So do we have any yet? Well, here, let me go over this and then we'll address the questions. All right. So I will put a link in the chat and then we'll talk through it. All right. So as we put in earlier, with code basis, you're going to get your first month free of what you just saw, the software, the premium version, which would have access to the line by line, the private scholarships. It would also have unlimited schools. So you can put as many colleges as you want in there, plus members only presentations every other Thursday. In addition to that, it'll give you the opportunity to have a call with Dan and myself. And what we're going to do during that call is just get a sense of where you're at in this process and see if we can help you. Right? We do work one-on-one with families, and sometimes there's good opportunities for us to make a meaningful difference. And we see it firsthand, save thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars throughout the process. So that'll also be another bonus for upgrading with code basis. In addition to that, we've gotten multiple questions about will the recording be shared? It will be shared right on this page, right? So you will be able to go back, watch the recording, and see it on this page as well. But okay. Yes, and someone just asked if they upgraded without the code, if you can still have the call. Of course, we'll put the direct scheduling link in there as well. Let me put that in there now. But do you want to take one of the questions, Dan, while I put this in there?
Sure, yeah, we'll go through some, we'll try and answer as many of these as we can. So if we apply early decision and we cannot compare the awards, what's your best advice? Uh, let's figure that out right now, right? I mean, we're going to be able to tell you if your kid's applying ED, what the award's going to be before they're applying. So there's no surprises.
No.
And if we think that's going to be affordable, great. If it's not, then you've got a tough decision to make because if you're going early decision, you're going to see one award and you're not going to have any leverage to appeal to negotiate with other offers because you're not going to have any other offers. So my suggestion would be to be using the CAT platform or meeting with us one-on-one to really get a very good idea of what that award's going to look like from that ED school, if it's going to be affordable, and then decide from there if that's what you want to do. I mean, as you can imagine, in a perfect world, kids would never apply early decision when you're looking at it financially because you're committed to one school and you don't know what they're going to do. Perfect world, every kid applies early action, which is non-binding. You get the awards back earlier, and then you can compare all the awards before they decide where they're going to go. But obviously, the kids want to apply ED because it gives them the best chance of getting in, and they're not paying for it, so who the hell cares? But early action, regular decision, for sure, is the best bet financially. And early decision, I think you really have to understand what those ramifications are before you pull that trigger. Um, Another question we had is, what if you have a parent who has no income but owns a home? Well, on the FAFSA form, great. You don't have to report the home's value on the FAFSA form. If the student's applying to a CSS profile school and they own the home, well, then most of those schools are going to take that equity into account. So although they might not have any income, the value of that home or their equity could generate a number within the SAI that then reduces their grants proportionally. Um, Another one we had here was on, can you elaborate on property ownership and effects of the FAFSA? For instance, do they consider equity in the property or rental income? Is it just based on tax returns? So again, for the FAFSA, property, your home, you're good, doesn't count. If you've got rental properties, you do have to report the equity in the rental properties. And then if those rental properties are generating income, they're looking at your tax return as well, and that rental income is going into the adjusted gross income. It's factored, so then it's kind of like an asset and income. If the rental property is generating losses because of depreciation or other things, well, then it could actually maybe be reducing your income, but you're having to report it from an asset standpoint in terms of the equity in the properties.
Right. Okay. I want to thank everyone for joining us. I think we've covered all of the questions, and we're just about out of time. So we hope to see everyone one-on-one, and please take advantage of that code basis. I believe you have to use it by midnight tonight.
Oh
And
yeah, good call. You do have to do it by
yeah,
midnight. They did say that.
yeah, sorry for not saying that, but you have to do it by midnight tonight. You'll get a free month of premium, and then you get to meet with Dan and myself, and our great team. So alrighty, everyone. Thank you for taking the time to listen to this. We hope it was very helpful, and we hope to see you soon. Bye bye.